I love this event. I love getting customers and partners together and talking about where technology is going next, specifically around AI and automation, how that all plays into the world of customer experience, right? It's an amazing time right now, unparalleled in my career for sure. The pace of innovation, how quickly things are changing, it presents a lot of opportunity for all of us and a lot of challenges for all of us, right? To try to sort through the noise and get some clarity and figure out what should we be focused on, what should we be ignoring, what's real, what's not. I grew up in the contact center. My first job, literally my first job, Daniel didn't tell this story. Daniel, when I was 13 years old, Daniel got a job at a company called Media Promotions. Media Promotions was a couple miles from our house, this tiny building, and he went in there on his first day to sell the Chronicle and Examiner newspaper over the telephone in a full-blown boiler room operation, right? And he worked 1 4-hour shift and came home and said, "This is horrible. I can't do this. Dad, I have to make all these calls and people keep hanging up on me and it's awful and I hate it and I can't go back there. I can't go back there." This whole thing. And I go and get on my bike and I ride down to this office. And I walk in and I said, my brother just quit. He's like, "Yeah, he didn't last very long." And I said, "I got this. I can do this." And he says, how old are you? I said, "Doesn't matter. I can do this." And so he gave me a shot. And I worked selling the Chronicle and Examiner newspaper in a boiler room operation, 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, all the way through the end of high school, making great money for a high school kid, right? To 40 and 50-year-old men smoking cigarettes. It was a good time. It was a good time to learn how to use the phone. But I grew up in the contact center. My first job out of school was at MCI, the long distance phone company, in residential customer service, right? That's the lowest rung of the ladder that you can get to in CX. We all have people like that in our organizations. And I learned a ton through that company and grew up in the world of telecom and got into the channel working with many partners that are here for a long time. And have been really thinking hard about where this technology is going next. Back in 2008, I started a company that was focused around cloud services, and it was the early days of cloud before most people knew what cloud was. It was the early days of UCaaS and CCaaS before we called it that. Do you remember those? We grew that business and sold that company off to a company called Intelisys, and we saw some massive growth around cloud adoption in the years after that. I see now even a bigger opportunity around customer experience technology. And I've been accused before of being a little early on time, at times around technology. And that's okay. I'd rather be early than late, right? And we have a good friend in our ecosystem, Matt Coughlin, that always reminds us that you're early all the way up until you're late. And that really does emphasize the point for all of us as leaders in the world of customer experience that we got to figure out how to get in front of this. Our people, our organizations, our stockholders, they expect us to pave the way for where your company needs to go next around technology. So what does that mean for us as leaders? It's all about leading change and how you lead change. And all of us have to be leaders of change. And if you think about this, guys, the landscape is shifting all the time right now. And think of the pace of this. McKinsey says that advances in AI, machine learning, robotics, and other technologies have increased the pace of change tenfold. It took 12 years from the release of the first mobile phone to reach 50 million users. Facebook, 4 years to reach 50 million. WeChat, only 1 year, and Pokemon, just 19 days, right? ChatGPT, it's crazy how that has changed things, right? It reached 100 million active users just 2 months after launch. Just 2 months after launch. This is really unbelievable around the pace of change. If we look at 3 years ago, 3 years ago, we had a massive challenge around hiring people. Still have a big challenge, but back then it was the Great Resignation. We all read about that, right? It was impossible for us to find people, especially, I mean, good Lord, how is it easy to staff a contact center? No one raises their hands, right? No, it's not. It's like one of the hardest things on the planet to staff a contact center. Yet now I throw into that this idea of the Great Resignation with a little bit of gas from this thing called COVID, and our world changed. It blew up on us, and we had to figure out how to lead through that change. 18 months ago, we started to see some really significant tightening of the belt around budgets. Am I right? And so before, I couldn't hire people because I couldn't find them, right? I couldn't get them to get to interviews. I couldn't get them to show up on the first day of work. Couldn't get them to stick through a class, right? That was a big challenge. 18 months later, I'm being told, even if you can find them, I can't let you hire them. Classic problem. You're leading a contact center perhaps, and you're trying to think about, what that challenge is they give you every budget cycle. Congratulations, you did a fantastic job this past year. Now I need you to do more with less, right? And our budgets get squeezed, and again, we have a hard time hiring people. Just 16 months ago, we saw Gen AI really come on the scene, and it was a transformational impact on our jobs, and will continue to be. I would say it's already forever changed the world of customer experience. Forever changed. How we decide to adapt to that is really what the big question is. Here's a couple of interesting stats. I've mentioned this. I was on the phone with a BPO customer just a couple of days ago and talking with their CEO, and I mentioned this first stat that ICMI has. They're on the right, on your right, yeah. 2023 will mark the first year that global contact center seats has gone down. A decline in the total number of butts and seats globally. That's never happened before. Isn't that interesting? So we see things like offshoring still, growing and accelerating. But if you look at the cumulative number of seats in the contact center globally, it's actually going down now. Why is that? Well, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. It's because of automation. It's because of AI. Companies are starting to figure out how do we leverage that to solve our labor challenges, right? I met a guy at a show last summer, a guy named Art Weston. He walks up to me and introduces himself as a self-proclaimed AI futurist. That's a bold statement, right? Hi, I'm Art. I'm an AI futurist. It's like, wow, that's interesting. He did have a huge brain. He really did. And he had some fascinating things to share, including a few things that were a bit frightening. But he did make this comment. 95% of contact center seats will go away within 5 years. That's what he claimed. 95% of contact center seats will go away in 5 years. Now, we've all been in this space for a long time. Who here believes that's hyperbole? You don't believe 95% will go away in the next 5 years. Does anybody believe that, by the way? Yeah, you think so? Yeah. So here's the thing. Who believes it's zero? Like, we'll lose 0 seats because of this. So we can agree. It's somewhere between 0 and 95, right? Somewhere between there. And think about that. This is a business of small numbers, am I right? I mean, if I can shave 10 seconds of handle time off of a call across 1,000 agents, that's a big number, right? Well, guys, if I can remove just 10% of the seats globally because of AI, think of what that translates to into dollars. And is it 10%? Is it 20? Is it 50? Is it 95? Somewhere in there, it's what I call a ban. A ban is a big ass number, right? And so you can use that, James. All right. What is happening around this? We see that disruptive CX technologies are replacing labor. We're seeing examples of that every single day. You're going to hear from companies today that have really embraced that idea, that their whole mission is to help you solve for that problem, right? And how do you move labor dollars into technology spend? We're seeing that on automation and AI, digital self-help. You'll hear some things about fractionalized labor today, which is a really fascinating model. Jamie Dimon says that our children will likely work 3.5 days per week because of AI. 3.5 days per week. Who here has an adult child that already works 3.5 days per week? Yeah, yeah. Did you say bastards? Yeah. It's fascinating, right? I mean, 200,000 jobs in the banking industry are going to go away in the next 10 years. I mean, there's a lot of big numbers that we're hearing about, but what's indisputable is that labor dollars are shifting into technology spend in your companies. Your companies are looking to you to figure out how you accomplish that. The brands that figure this out will lead and will win. And the brands that don't figure this out are the ones that are going to be on the kind of the garbage heap, you will, of brands that used to be great companies. And we all have amazing examples of that. We were talking just the other day, Vic and I, about this, that whoever thought, I'm not, don't worry if it shows your age. I'm old, so I'll raise my hand. Whoever thought that Nortel would go out of business? Anybody? No one thought Nortel would go out of business. Nortel was going to be here forever, right? Big, established brand that somehow, in very short order, got passed over, right? And became irrelevant and suddenly disappeared. How many brands do we know of today that are household brands that will experience that same fate? I commend you guys that you're here trying to get ahead of this and trying to figure this thing out, because it's challenging, but it's also a massive opportunity. Quick show of hands, I'm curious. Who here in your company is already budgeting for AI, or who is shifting budget from other areas? Who's budgeting for AI already? Raise your hand. Awesome. Very cool. Who here is trying to find dollars from other areas to move into AI spend? Yeah, that's common as well. Guys, this is a challenge. This is a huge challenge. And in the time of change, we're seeing lots of conflicting priorities. Lots of conflicting priorities. I call it the CX paradox. Think about this. You're being asked to do some really difficult things as a CX leader. I want you to automate everything you can, but still delight customers, right? Still delight customers. I want you to reduce human interaction, but I still want you to make this experience really personalized for our customer, right? Personalize it. No human interaction, but personalize the experience. Embrace self-service, right? Embrace self-service, but remove friction. Remove friction. And of course, decrease expense at all cost. While you grow revenue, thank you for doing your job, right? I mean, this is what we're tasked with as CX leaders. It's kind of an impossible job. It's very, very difficult to be able to execute on all those things on the left that are priorities for the business and all the things on the right, which are the outcomes that they're wanting to drive. They conflict with each other, okay? They conflict with each other. So there's this paradox here. Who knows Ecobee? Anybody have an Ecobee thermostat at home? All right, cool. I just bought one a few weeks back at Costco, got a great deal on it. I think it was $199 after a $100 instant rebate. So it's a $200 item, right? I go home, just bought a new house up in Western Massachusetts near the Berkshires. Beautiful spot, but it's cold, apparently. I'm from California, so that was a bit of a shocker for me. So I need this thermostat because my first electric bill at our new house was $1,400 for 1 month. And I was like, well, this is not sustainable, right? So I went out, I got an Ecobee. This is a really cool thing. I get it home, I unpack it, I start to do this installation. It walks you through on an app exactly what to do next and next and next. In about 5-6 minutes into the process, it says, you need to call support. 5 minutes into this installation process, I got to call support. So I call, bot answers and gets my information, says, we'll call you back when it's your turn in line. Fantastic, good. They have that automatic callback feature. I love it. I hang up, I go do other stuff. 15 minutes later, I get that phone call. There's a guy in Montreal, in Canada, that calls me and is amazing. He knows everything about this product. His depth of knowledge was mind-blowing. He spent an hour and 15 minutes with me on the phone as I was installing this thermostat, including going down to the basement, rewiring my furnace, and going, and doing all these different things, and downloading this and sending him pictures. And he was amazing. He stuck with me through this entire process, hour and 15 minutes. A week later, I bought a second Ecobee for the other part of our home. I did the same exact thing. I got this amazing woman on the phone that had incredible knowledge. This one, I had to climb up in the attic to rewire a furnace up in the attic, and I had to spend all that time doing that. An hour and 15 minutes. I asked them, I'm curious, out of 10 of these that are purchased, how many of them require somebody to spend an hour on the phone with you while you walk them through it? Oh, easily 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Now, as a consumer, was that a great experience for me? Oh, yeah. I went on LinkedIn. I talked about it with friends. I bragged about, this is amazing. I'm such a raving fan. And then I started to think about this. Every one of those calls cost at least $50, right? At least 50, am I right? You mean Canadian labor rates, it's probably what, $35 an hour, loaded, hour 15 minutes. It's a $50 call. I bought a unit for $200 from Costco. What kind of margin did they make on that, Costco? Probably $100, would you think? So if 100 goes to Costco and 50 goes to my rep that installed this thing on the phone, I've got $50 left before I've even built the product. How sustainable is that business model? You see the conflicts there, right? We delighted the customer, but at the same time, we lost money. And you think about, how do I get Andrew to be this raving fan about our thermostat without bleeding cash over here to make it happen? That's our challenge. That's also our opportunity. Ecobee's got an amazing product. They've got to figure out how to do this at scale. All of us have to figure out how to do this at scale. There's real challenges. Labor, you can't hire the people you need. Training and churn, what a massive challenge today, right? Remember, we're trying to hire and train and retain the same people that are banking on working 3 days a week in just a very short amount of time, right? It's hard. And when it's remote work, it gets even harder. How do I attract people, train them to proficiency quicker? The time to proficiency is such a painful metric for so many of our businesses. It's taking way too long. And then agent churn. I won't ask for a show of hands here, but I talk to CX leaders all the time, that are saying, I have a 30% annual churn, a 50% annual churn. I had a company that had a 120% annual churn. Think about how impossible it is to run your businesses when you even have a 10 or 20% annual churn. It's painful. And then, of course, automation done wrong. It's exacerbating the problem. I always remind us that before we're CX leaders, we're also consumers. I just showed one story about me as a consumer, right? And think of the last time that you tried to be deflected, right? That they tried to implement something where they made it really difficult for you to get to a live human, and instead they're going to force you down this digital self-service path, and before you know it, you're yelling into the phone, representative, right? Just to try to get a human on the phone. Right? This is not a delightful experience. This is the best of intentions to automate this experience so that a live human doesn't have to answer the call and interact, right? But they're doing it in a way that simply pisses off customers. And that's our challenge as we design these journeys for clients. We've got to get really good at thinking about, is this going to result in the consumer ending that interaction saying, that was fantastic. I'm a fan. That was amazing. I want to do that again, right? I want to do that again. I had my wife bought a gift for our daughter for her birthday last October. And the day of her birthday, this basket thing from Harry and David was supposed to show up at our house near Boston. And it hadn't shown up. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. It still hasn't shown up. She's starting to panic. We're in California at the time. She says, I don't understand it. This is her big gift. It's not there yet. This is not acceptable. And she goes on her computer and she's trying to find her information about the order. And while she's doing that, I go to harryanddavid.com. There's a little bot there. I say, where's my order? It replies back, what's your last name? Pryfogle. What's your billing zip code? 95442. And immediately it came back saying, your order is being delivered in the next 20 minutes. Honey, you don't have to find that email. The thing's going to be there in 20 minutes. right? Guys, that was a delightful experience. Was there a human involved in that? Just one, me, right? That's it. There was no human involved in that, right? This was a completely automated experience that got resolution for my issue immediately. And now I've told the Harry and David story repeatedly, right? We see how this creates opportunity for us as CX leaders. So it's making this job really, really difficult. How do we then respond to change? How do you and I as CX leaders respond to change? But one is simply to deny that it's happening, right? We deny change is happening. You have people in your organization, even leaders in your company, that are in that first bucket. Am I correct? Is everyone? I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. Yes. We have people that are simply denying that this change is happening, or they're going to keep doing the same thing and hope for a different outcome. I know the change is happening, but if we just continue to execute on what we've always done and do a really good job at that, it'll be fine. We'll be just fine. And then this is a big category right now, where we'll talk about change a lot, and we'll have all sorts of meetings and form all sorts of committees, and we'll discuss it, ad nauseum, while postponing any decision of consequence. I find most customers are in that bucket right now, And then lastly, it's those leaders that are bold enough to reimagine the enterprise and to reimagine it, to think about what can I do that is different, not just for the sake of being different, but for competitive advantage. What can I do that can implement technology that can then increase revenues for our business? Not just cut costs, but actually increase revenues and grab larger share of the market. Those are leaders that are reimagining the enterprise. Albert Einstein says, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. We got to change our thinking. So what's your point of view? What's your point of view on change? You got to have a point of view about how you perceive change and the role of change in your business. Here's mine. It's really simple. Change is, number one, inevitable, right? It's inevitable. We know it's going to happen. It always does. It also tends to elicit a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. With my own people, with the people I roll up to, colleagues in the business, lots of fear, uncertainty, and doubt come along with change. But this is the next thing. I would say to you also that change is evolutionary before it becomes revolutionary. Think about that for a second. It's evolutionary before it becomes revolutionary. Let me give you some examples on this. Here's a chart that we use to talk about the effort it takes to change around technology, whether a certain technology is low effort or high effort, and is that technology also a low impact on the business or a high impact on the business? And think about different technologies that we all have experience with. And I'll give you some examples here. Things like direct internet access, co-location space, SD-WAN, UCaaS, security. I would say all of those. Security is kind of the sole exception, in my opinion. It's starting to move up more to the right. The impact is really, really important. But think about that. That's all transactional stuff. Those are things that are probably already in your budgets, right? You've already got it baked. It's the blocking and tackling of our company, but none of that is revolutionary for the company. And it's kind of blocking and tackling. We kind of know how to do this today, right? We do it every day. Then you look at things that are revolutionary. Think of things like, who here would say that deploying a brand new CRM platform would be revolutionary for a business? Yeah? It's super easy, right? Right? Just takes a few weeks to deploy and get everyone trained up and we're all good. No, right? Salesforce, an implementation enterprise-wide in Salesforce, is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? 24 months? It is a long project, right? It's revolutionary, but it takes a tremendous amount of effort. Being able to go to a full BPO. I've never used outsourced labor before. I just have my internal team, and I'm going to lift that and outsource that to a third party. That can be revolutionary for a business. It can also be a big lift for a business, right? So I like to think about technologies that provide leaders a quick win, a fast return on investment, right? Short time to value, that's really important, and builds momentum, which is a really important thing for you right now. How do you start to build momentum towards change? How do you start to do that? Because if your plan is to walk into a CIO's office or a CFO or a CEO and make the argument that we need to revolutionize our entire customer experience strategy overnight, and this is what it looks like, what's the reaction that you'll likely get? It's hard, right? You're probably not going to get them saying, yes, go. We have no idea what that means, but we're on board. We're behind you, right? No. What they're looking for are what are the things that you can do quickly that can bring value to the business quickly, that can show an ROI quickly. And that starts to build momentum. So you think about automating QA and QM. You think about analytics and using chatbots more effectively, agent assist, branded caller ID. These are all things that are very low effort, but can have major impact on the business. Top left quadrant things for me are important. Low effort, high impact. And guess what happens? Guess what happens if you do that? Before you know it, you've revolutionized your customer experience strategy. That's what happens. Because I take these evolutionary steps, and over time, it starts to revolutionize what I'm doing as a business. Okay? So, what do you got to do to respond to change? What do you have to do to respond to change? Think of these questions. How do I react to it? How do I, as a leader, react to it? How do I adjust to it, right? How do I adjust to that change? What do I do to work with it, to learn from it? Can I capitalize on it? Is there a way for me as a leader to show my business how I can capitalize on change? We've known about kind of the agile development method for a long time, right? It's been in our businesses for a long time. We've built teams around it and big motions around it. How we apply this to CX is interesting to me. Agile is an approach that accounts for the nature of change and actually engages it. It enables organizations to cope with continuous change, permits them to flourish in a world that is increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. That's what Agile enables companies to do. How do you define that around customer experience? We asked ChatGPT because that's what everyone does today. Agile development is an iterative and collaborative approach to software development that emphasizes flexibility, adaptability, and continuous improvement, right? That's what Agile suggests, flexibility and adaptability on the front end. That's right out of the gate. It allows for me to remain flexible. And if you're not flexible and adaptable today, you're already in trouble, right? You've got to be. The next is to test, learn, and iterate. That's such an important part of that process, right? How do I test a new idea? How do I work around it and massage it and get it better and iterate on that, right? And then continuous improvement, where I never stop looking at how we get better, faster, smarter, right? That's such a big part of that. That plays into CX in some really important ways. Meeting the customer on the channel of their choosing. Right? That's at the core of Agile CX. How do I meet customers where they want to meet me, right? Embrace what I call delightful automation. Delightful automation. The Harry and David example is delightful automation, am I right? The idea of empowering agents. You got a churn problem? How do you figure out how to empower your agents more? By the way, and we've all seen this, if I take all the transactional, mundane, this isn't a word, automatable, is that a word? If I take all those simple tasks and automate all those simple tasks using AI, now my agents are left with what? The complex, the hard, the difficult. They don't get the break for the kind of the brainless tasks that they might have on a few of those calls before they get hammered again with something really, really complex. But in this world, I got to empower my agents because every one of their interactions are going to be the complex, right? How do I listen and act in real time and at scale? How do I make sure that I've got my finger on the pulse of my data and my business so that I know exactly what's happening and when it's happening, and it informs my decisions, not next quarter, but like this afternoon? And how do you arm yourself with that kind of information? How do you build a flexible staffing bench? It's interesting. You're going to hear from Omni today about their fractionalized labor model that we're big fans of. This idea of being able to use fractionalized labor pools to help smooth out, if you will, the peaks and valleys in our arrival patterns in a contact center. It's transformational for a contact center. And then develop your innovation muscle. That's such an important thing. We've got to get good at this. It's why that stuff in the top left quadrant is so important. Because the more I do of that, the more my teams get used to change. The more my teams get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And we start to embrace that little by little, and over time, it starts to build this muscle that we can flex when we know we have to implement change. So our goal for today, is we want to outfit you with information on CX and AI solutions that will enable you to not just cope with change, but to thrive with change, to thrive with it. And our thesis is this: you got to have first a systems view of all the interrelated parts that contribute to exceptional CX. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. You got to have the flexibility and courage to start, right? Just to start, to jump in and get involved, working now to improve one part at a time. And then the voracious appetite to see where that learning can be applied next. That's the exciting part of this journey, right? Because what we're creating today is going to be radically different in just 6 and 12 and 18 months down the road from the way we've always done it. It'll be radically different. So the systems view, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I want you to think about it in this instance. Joe hits my website. And Joe he's referred there, he clicked on an ad, whatever. He gets to my website, starts consuming information about my product or service. What technology can I begin to deploy right there at the digital front door of my business to help on conversion rates, to improve conversion rates, to take that incredibly high value visitor to the website and get them to actually convert? Such an important thing. But now Joe decides, that's not enough. I want to talk to somebody. I want to interact with somebody. He's going to send an email or a chat or an SMS, or he's going to pick up the phone and call somebody. And we know the most expensive way to handle that live interaction is with what? A live human, right? So the next bucket here is, how do I automate and contain that interaction without it getting to a live human? And again, how do I do that in a way that delights customers? Not easy. You're going to see some amazing examples of that today. Then we get it, Joe decides he hasn't been contained. He still has an issue. He still needs to interact with somebody live. So then we get into what we call the routing and ACD, what we affectionately call the plumbing. This is what your contact center platforms are. Whether it be Prim or cloud, it's what we call the plumbing. By the way, incredibly important. Who here has ever had bad plumbing, right? You know how important plumbing is, right? So I'm not degrading the contact center platform. What I would tell you is, though, that they all do a pretty damn good job at it now. And it's the blocking and tackling of the routing engine, if you will. It's not where the innovation is happening. In fact, if you look at Five9 or NICE or Genesys or TalkDesk or any of those guys, right? All of their R&D is in the adjacent categories. That's what they're developing. That's what they're acquiring technology. That's where they're spending more money to figure out how they do these things better, faster, cheaper. So then we get into agent tools and resources. Joe does ultimately get through to a live human. What technology can I deploy that makes that human radically more effective? How do I get them answers faster? How do I use generative AI to allow them to respond quicker? How do I use AI to source knowledge across a ton of disparate sources of knowledge in a business? Because knowledge is organic. It doesn't ever sit in just one place. It's never just static, right? How do I use technology to help my agents be radically more efficient? And then how do I use AI to see how the heck we're doing? How do I measure and improve what we're doing, right? How do I do things like automate the entire QA process? We have a customer we're working with today that has a team of 120 people, 120 people in QA. Big organization. They have 120 people. And what would you guess is the average number of transactions they're actually monitoring, listening to, scoring? Anybody have a guess? 2 to 5%. That's right. 2 to 5%. When the technology exists in this room right now to ingest 100% of those and score 100% of those and use that information to inform decisions. Amazing. And then, of course, staffing. When I just talked about Omni, you're going to hear some examples of that later today. What this starts to generate is a flywheel for change, a flywheel for change, where it's continuous, right? It's continuous. I'm testing something. I'm learning from that. I'm iterating on that before I go to the next thing. And a good example of this, let's say I want to reduce human interaction. I want to reduce human interaction. Maybe the way I start that process is I look at applying chat analytics to start to test where chat is breaking down, okay? Where chat is breaking down in my business. And I want to take that data and learn from that to see, okay, they're getting stuck here, here, and there. I need to redesign my chat journey in my business. And then after I do that, I'm going to introduce self-service that reduces that friction, reduces that interaction, and then I can go on to the next thing. Make sense? How do we get that flywheel going? How do we get that flywheel going? Guys, what we know is as leaders, you simply can't afford to sit on the sidelines and see how this plays out. You can't. It doesn't mean you have to jump in and rip and replace everything overnight. It doesn't mean you have to throw a grenade in the middle of all your technology strategies and say, hey, we're blowing everything up and starting off, from scratch. That's not practical. We'd have another conference about how to find a job, right? We'd all have to go find jobs if we did that. Our companies want to trust us, right? But we know that we can't simply sit on the sidelines and see what develops. Can't do that anymore. There are ways to jump in and get involved and start to test and learn from it and iterate on that and start to fine tune that innovation muscle over time. So for today, we want to leave here with clarity about where the technology is and where it's going, how that can impact our business, confidence around, I'm in a better position today to be able to go make these arguments internally in my business to move the ball forward. Commitment, where I hope that many of you walk away tomorrow afternoon having this new fire underneath you that, hey, I'm gonna be the leader I'm supposed to be in this space, and I'm gonna go make this happen. That's a level of commitment to lead change in your organization. Good? Excellent. Looking forward to a great day today. Next coming up, Daniel, walk us through it. Thank you, guys.